I might just quickly go around everybody here. Perhaps start with Janette Rutterford, Professor Rutterford. We've heard about this brave new world. What are your thoughts about how dynamic financial education can be, the MSc can be, given all this ground that you have to cover, and yet it's shifting all the time?
Well, one of the things we do at the AU is we do everything on the internet, so we can update courses overnight. There's absolutely no problem with being topical if we want to be topical. But one of the things that's good about learning at that level is looking at the past, looking at previous examples, seeing what's different today, what you can learn, and how you can take it forward. So it's really quite easy to be flexible in finance.
Because one thing I'm hearing, and I'd like to put this to both of you, is that increasingly in the city, in the financial world, there are people who are young and have no corporate memories, so people don't always have an instinct for knowing what can go wrong.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think the way I'd characterise it is the challenge of a knowledge business, which is fundamentally what we all are, whether you're in David's business or mine, is twofold. One, it's knowing what you already know, and then it's deploying that effectively. And that may seem trivial, but that is all we're trying to do. It's remembering what we know and making sure that a trapped knowledge around the institution is actually brought to bear so we don't have to relearn it. And then making sure that when we need that information, need that insight, we can deploy it effectively. And a good base for that is education and training, because it just gives you that sense of knowing how to look and what to do. It doesn't guarantee that you can navigate things in a sort of guaranteed way, but it does give you a sense of being at least able to identify what the issues are.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree with that. I think the issue of education is it gets you a long way, and it's the springboard from which you then use judgment and experience to make good decisions. The danger is that somebody with a qualification thinks they actually know, and I can tell you that I don't know, they don't know. Accepting that you don't know, but you're going to have to look, is the key to success.
I think one of the factors behind the crisis of 2007 was you had this exact demographic problem, which was in a lot of fund management companies and banks. You had older people who didn't have quantitative skills, and then you had the young guys turn up with the quantitative skills and started valuing things using mathematical models without realizing that mathematical models don't always tell you the full story. So securitized mortgage obligations, for example, were valued using theoretical models, which were great, but didn't give you the right answer.
But I think that the modelling drove us into the ground as an industry, and for whatever reason. But I think your next research project should be the life cycle of the CIO. I'm not a CIO. They tend to get appointed after a crisis when their bosses have been sacked. And they last
just for everybody, the
they
CIO
last through to the
being,
next one.
Just remind us what that is.
Chief Investment Officer. Okay. The person who wears the regulatory orange jacket.
Where the buck stops.
The buck stops.
I was once doing a beauty parade of pension fund managers, and they all came in, and they said, some of them said, well, performance for the last 3 years is this much. And some of them said, our performance for the last 5 years is this much. And it turned out they were all giving their performance after their last mistake.
Okay. Any thoughts from the floor on the role of education in trying to make sense of the financial world as it's evolving? We've got a question from the back. I don't know if it's on that or something else.
Hi, my name is Atul Shah, Suffolk Business School, and a former undergraduate student of Janette.
But you're all right now. Yes.
Thank you very much for your talks. The question is addressed as Wol. Regarding diversity in finance. Actually, if we look at the content of finance education, it is not diverse at all. It's actually very monocultural. It is, I mean, even if the recent evidence like the Swimming with Sharks book, you know, there's a serious cultural problem in finance. And we at university, we don't talk about culture in finance. And we don't talk about the diverse cultural approaches to finance. We never talk about financial literacy. There is no history ever taught. The political economy side of finance is never taught on finance courses or accounting courses. So if that is the education, how are you going to expect diversity in thinking? Thank you.
I mean, it's difficult to challenge what you're saying there. I mean, how would I challenge it? I start off I'll give the answer to this question from my experience of people. So when youngsters with their fancy qualifications come into our business, they immediately jump to modelling and sort of looking at things to find the answer. And I kind of go, look, we're not being paid 2 and 20 to model and to process. This institution is paid 2 and 20 to exercise its judgment. And judgment, unfortunately, is in the sort of soft areas. It's our experiences, our interactions, our conversations. That's where we form judgments and apply them. And this behavioural finance is being increasingly taught, and that's an area which I really do think has a big impact on the way some decisions are made. Certainly it has an impact on the decisions that are made in things like banks, for example, where very clearly you had the auditors, the regulators in terms, not the regulators, sorry, the regulators and the rating agencies who colluded with the banks to value that nonsense at the price there was, that then drove the bonus system which they focused on, which basically meant the senior management absolved any responsibility for what was going on as long as the checks kept on coming in. The fact was complete fiction. It's neither here nor there. Now, common sense would have told you, but where was the role for common sense? That actually, this is nonsense, stop it. When you had Royal Bank of Scotland, whose balance sheet was bigger, 4 times bigger than the UK economy. I mean, come on. So I completely agree with you. There is a role for the softer side, but the trouble is you can't easily sell a course where you can't demonstrate the impact of learning this is going to help you today or tomorrow, because it only helps when you're in the job.
David, and you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I think I'm trying to sort of get to a crisp answer to this. So I talked about the importance of the US consumer in driving investment decisions, because one's judging people that one doesn't know from London. Why should I have a view on that? Well, they don't have much of a view from New York either. And I have clients who are based or come from all parts of the world, because London's very good at managing money globally for people who want it managed globally. Their insights into business I find fascinating, and I make it my business to talk to them about what it's like to run a shopping mall in northeastern China, because it's different to running one in Coventry. And I think the acquisition of information like that provides insight. What people like me do with it is another matter. It's very difficult to make that sound anything other than sort of pie in the sky, but that's, I think, the way decisions get made.
I wondered, Janette, whether you just want to say something about the changing nature of the way money is being managed. You were talking to me about this before. Obviously, we've seen the rise of private equity, ETFs being bought more than traditional fund management. How does that play into the sort of educational scene and how you prepare people for this world?
Well, I think it's getting more competitive. And I mean, one of the things you have to learn when you're learning about finance is you have to learn about the cyclicality of finance. So, for example, you're saying absolute returns are the flavour of the month at the moment, but 10 years ago it was, relative performance. And so one of the things that education gives you as a perspective, and experience gives you as a perspective, to say we've been here before and learning from that. But it's a very competitive industry.
We've got we'll just hold that thought. Got a question over here from my boss, so I'm sure it'll be a good one.
Thanks, Nigel. Gavin Oldham, Share Radio, and also behind the Managing My Money course as a radio course. And we've really enjoyed that, I must say. You talk about technology, David. And technology has arguably been the cause of these extremely low inflation rates and extremely low interest rates which we have. It's been endemic, like a revolution for the last 20 years. But it's also caused probably the greatest polarization of wealth that we've seen for many, many years. Now, that has really benefited those at the top end, and it has benefited those in developing countries who wouldn't have had access to a lot of the mobility that they see these days otherwise. But in the middle, there's a lot of people who've lost out. I'd like to know whether there's a role for young people in terms of incentivized learning, because I believe that it's not just a matter of providing the life skills, but also some resources to start your working life. And what we seem to have done is to bring about a situation where people finish their education and they have saddle around their necks a massive great load of student debt, which they then got to carry around for years. And it seems to me that if we brought in incentivized learning so that we used inheritance tax instead of as a levy which goes straight into government expenditure, as a way of incentivizing learning for the future, we could actually generate young people with both the life skills and some resources to do some democratization of wealth creation. Now, I'd just like to know what you think about that as a concept.
That's a great question. Actually, I don't completely agree with you.
Could we have a couple of days to think
I
about
don't completely agree with you, actually. I think because you sort of moved from talking about globalization and inequality and technology into learning. What I've seen, and this is just my opinion, it's about being attached to capital. And what technology did was make it easy to be attached to capital. If you're attached to capital, and let's take the City of London as being a great analogy for that, and it might be a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever, or a professional in it, you kind of did okay from globalization. If you weren't, you were screwed. I mean, and actually, when I say screwed, I'm talking about middle ground. You know, the lawyer who's working in the provinces doing conveyancing, who got obliterated by technology. You know, previously, he was able to send his kids to private education. It wasn't a problem. Private education, which was suddenly opened up to a global world, and the price of it went through the roof relative to what people are earning. I think the issue is much more about flexibility about the way you develop your career. So to think that you have one career only, in an environment when technology is actually just running straight through vast swathes of the economy, and by the way, we are just at the start of it. We have barely scratched the surface of what it's going to do. Is for me the missing link here. Now, if we can get government incentivized, that's great. But it's that real focus understanding. The mindset is you've not got one job for life. You may have 2 or 3 careers, actually. That's the big change. And when people come to me and say, you know, what should I do? I say, I have no earthly idea, because it's so difficult to predict what's going to happen next. Should you be an engineer? Should you be a doctor? Should you be this? Should you be that? You know, and a safe profession, so it's a very long answer to your question, but a safe profession like the medical profession, actually, it's only safe because it's regulated in the way we regulate it. There's lots of doctors do that they don't really need to do. So even that doesn't give you the answer.
Follow that, David.
Well, yes, the question circled around, so I'll probably answer the one I want to answer. But I'll pick up the point. I've had 4 careers so far, and I'm very comfortable with that, and I'm old. So if you're 20 or 25, you have to accept that you're going to have multiple careers, and you better be flexible and be open to change. And that is part of the education. It could be part of the financing. You know, I could talk about why it seems odd to me to saddle the current generation with student debts when their previous generations thought it should be the other way round. And then the final point is that I'm afraid if I sounded amoral about investment because in technology, I suppose I'm paid not to make judgments about why Amazon is more successful than British home stores. But, you know, you better be certain that my portfolios are in one, not the other.
Well, we're seeing some rapid change at Sports Direct, so maybe things do change. I don't know. All right, I think we don't want to be too late because we want to give you time to network. So should we just take 2 more questions from the floor? And I think we've got one here and then one, the gentleman. Oh, okay, we take you and then the gentleman behind you as well.
Thank you. My name is Anthony Nutter. I retired after 40 years working in the city a couple of years ago. And I want to ask Wol about the role of women in private equity in particular. Is it your experience, and you refer to the alpha male, that women in private equity have a different attitude to covenant light, to the carry they demand, to the debt they burden a business with? And is that why you're so supportive of women in private equity? Or is it more a question of some other balance?
It's certainly not the former. It really, I think, you know, you have an institutional view of covenant light, of debt, of returns. No, it's a more subtle thing than that. It's a slightly long answer. I do apologise, but just to give credence to the question. When you go and look to back an entrepreneur, the first thing is, unlike the stock market, I can't just look it up and find them. I have to go and buy them. I have to go and find these people who want to do business with us. And there's a way you gain power in a private equity firm. That is, you have access to a black book of contacts that allows you to go in and deal with people And when you find those deals, which hopefully are the great deals, you don't share them. The reason you don't share them is because actually as you progress up the organisation, the track record of that firm attaches to you personally because of what deals did you do. And that really pushes you towards an aggressive alpha male type approach to life. That is not my business. In my business, we do the exact opposite, which is you encourage to share ideas, talk, interface. Not one person goes to a meeting, many go to a meeting. And actually, the way I play back to my institutional investors who come and ask me who did the deals, I say Livingbridge did.
Okay, well, we have a lot of time. But is business education that you're involved with up to teaching these softer skills as well as all the stuff you've talked about?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you cover all sorts. Behavioural finance is a way of thinking about how people's behaviour affects financial decision making.
Okay. There's a question there.
Thank you very much. Denise Naylor, Associate Lecturer in teaching accounting with the Open University for 15 years, and I am an accountant and worked across the city in similar roles. Thank you very much, Wol, for picking up the historical perspective. Women got the vote about 100 years ago or so, and also to the questioner who talked about culture. So I think sometimes we forget what a short period of time women and others have had to develop into this arena. The Married Women's Property Act was 1925. My mother was born before then. When my mother came to this country and married in 1950, she had to give up her job because of the marriage bar. Independent taxation for women was 1990. So I like to say, as women, we've had really very little chance to show our contribution to the finance and accounting industry. And I'd just like to say it's been a massive privilege to work for the OU, speaking personally. I was appointed one of the first appointees to teach chartered accountancy in the OU. I know there are a lot of people here tonight who have businesses. Please do consider allowing your women staff to become students to us, because in my classroom it's still more the men who are sponsored by the employer. So that's a personal plea. Secondly, the Vice-Chancellor reported last May to us at our conference of associate lecturers that there is now over 50% of students in the Open University is female. So I think that, be patient. You will see a culture change, trust me. As soon as women get into these positions, there will be a change. And thank you so much for airing these situations. And of course, I've got to say, please sponsor your female staff in education, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. And I perhaps won't ask our male panellists to add anything to that at this juncture. I can't summarise everything you've both said, except to say that I was struck by what you said about being different. And I learned very many years ago how, until you understand the structures, you can't kick against them. So I think that's a terrific argument for sophisticated and appropriate business education. So you've got the structures, and then you can begin to be creative and do the sort of things you've been talking about. And also you mentioned mushy thinking and how we really don't want that at the moment. So again, people need to be equipped for this world that you've described, and to understand risk, and we need to find those people who can deliver these returns, whether it's through private equity or fund management or even working in accountancy. Thank you very much indeed to you all.